certainly worth it, over $6 million in infrastructure costs, both as payback, upfront costs, and actual physical hookup costs to their system, about $6 million. The other problem, though, down the road is that the cost of that water on a per unit basis would probably be significantly higher than BMI's water, so we have to factor in the operating costs in the future. But there are some options, and BMI is going to have to do something if the lake keeps going down, so there could be options down the road. We're just going to keep working on it. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Any other questions on the fisheries division? Wildlife diversity division, 17 positions. The State Wildlife Action Plan. The State Wildlife Action Plan covers 256 of the 892 species that we have the management authority for, and 22 different habitats described therein. And it's the existence of the State Wildlife Action Plan that enables the state to receive federal dollars. It's also the State Wildlife Action Plan that was the basis for the Blue Ribbon Panel recommended amount. The question that the Blue Ribbon Panel asked themselves when they initially sat down was, how much money do we need? And they answered that question by, well, what if we were to implement every state's wildlife action plan and provide 3/4 of that funding so that it was set up like Pittman-Robertson in a 25-75 scenario, and that's what generated the $1.2 billion. So, some people, we hear that, we know that there are other states that have concerns about sportsmen's revenue being spent towards species that are typically managed by the diversity division. We know there's states, Utah and Idaho, for example, that have laws that prohibit those funds, but I would like to point that our State Wildlife Action Plan is not exclusive to non-game species. We have bighorn sheep, mule deer, sage grouse, Lahontan cutthroat trout, all in our State Wildlife Action Plan. State Wildlife Action Plan is really addresses species needs based on habitat needs, and so we don't like to necessarily divide and think of it as game and non-game. We have an opportunity to do good things for habitats that are described in the State Wildlife Action Plan that would provide a benefit to all, keep common species common, keep things off the endangered species list while simultaneously providing some uplift and benefit to game species. And we're hopeful that the Restoring America's Wildlife Act is passed, and look forward to those federal dollars to assist in implementing that action plan. Nevada was one of the first states to complete that action plan. That action plan has served as a template for many other states and has been referenced in high regard by both other states as well as our federal partners. However, non-game species management is a responsibility of the Diversity Division. T&E species, not exclusively. There are some of those species, as we talked about, Lahontan cutthroat trout is a threatened species. It's managed by Fisheries Division. And then GIS. So we talked about benefits of a program, cross-divisional benefits of one program located in one division. The GIS system and program, all the data management, data analysis sits in wildlife diversity, and is a significant portion of those 17 positions in diversity, but it provides benefits to all the other divisions. And then the Tahoe Environmental Improvement, we have a single biologist dedicated to the Tahoe Basin that works quite closely with personnel in Department of Natural Resources and Conservation down in Carson. Any questions on the structure of the Diversity Division? Habitat Division, 35 positions, and Development project review. This has become a larger and larger part of what Habitat did, what the Habitat Division is and does. In FY 2016, technical guidance was provided on over 629 project proposals, 52 of which were energy or transmission projects and 143 were mining. And so there's a significant amount of time and energy that goes into looking at these NEPA proposals. Because we have so much public land, those actions can't occur on that land without adequate NEPA. We are a cooperating agency with Forest Service, with the BLM. They're required to collect our input relative to wildlife. And so that is a huge chunk, a significant chunk of what the Habitat Division does. They administer the mining, the industrial ponds, and that permit process. That program was revamped. We had a regulation before you all here just recently. Tried to modernize that permitting process, standardize it, and include some industries that were not existing on the landscape at the time that program was created. And so we tried to kind of modernize it, make it more inclusive and more equitable across those industries. Again, it was a scenario where we had mines on the landscape. One case that comes to mind is a lithium mine where it was a selenium concentration, gradual evaporative process that created a bunch of surface ponds. We had a lot of waterfowl coming into those ponds. We were spending a significant amount of time and energy interfaced with the operator as well as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. But because that whole process and that whole industry was new and didn't exist at the time that permit process was developed, it was excluded. So we were kind of collecting from hard rock miners and then expending that money on lithium facility, and the revamping of that regulation modernized it and made it more inclusive. Habitat conservation and restoration, we heard quite a bit about that with some of the fire efforts earlier today. The Nevada Partners Program, the Nevada Partners for Conservation and Development. Since its inception, this program has provided assistance on approximately 300,000 acres of post-fire reseeding. It includes aerial application of seeds, drill seeding, and adding species not typically included in the federal agency's post-fire seed mixes. So historically, those federal agencies were more worried about soil retention, and they put anything on the ground that would grow and keep that soil in place, but they couldn't spend the money on those species that had greater value for wildlife. And we were able to provide assistance to that end. The Partners Program has monitored approximately 1,500 vegetation plots in pinyon juniper chainings, hand thinning and mastication, post-fire reseeding, sagebrush interseeding, shrub plantings, weed spraying, and meadow restoration treatments. The data collected in the bi-state sage-grouse population management units indicates that where conifer removal has occurred, desirable vegetation has increased along with no increases in non-native annual grasses such as cheatgrass. And that Partners Program has really been the key piece to being able to dedicate personnel and resources to get those kinds of answers. Water Development Program. Read some of the accomplishments of the Water Development Program in the Department Activity Report. But being the driest state in the union, learning a little bit about some of the competitive interactions with wild horses, just having gone through 4 years of catastrophic drought, can't overemphasize the importance of the Water Development Program. And this goes, again, well beyond game species. The species that have been documented using developed waters are broad and impressive, from reptiles to birds to small mammals. And then wildlife management areas. As we showed on that first slide, 11 wildlife management areas encompassing over 120,000 acres. So some key habitats in those areas for key species, again, both game and non-game. We've got some habitat down at Overton, specific to southwestern willow flycatchers and yellow-billed cuckoos. There's that word again. that's pretty important habitat and recognized as such by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as well. Any questions on the Habitat Division?
Quick question, I'd like you, when the department does a project review for development, does the proponent of the development, the applicant, pay to offset the cost?
Not very often. There was some legislation on energy projects, and it was intended to be a cost recovery. The problem is that when it's a project proposal, it's on the extreme front end, and so on those projects, if the project isn't permitted, if the decision is either it's not economically viable for that proponent, or the land management agency decides not to permit it, because the actual operation of that facility is so far removed from the input, it's oftentimes difficult. Conceptually, the cost recovery is a good model, and that's really some of the justification that we've used on the industrial artificial pond permit, try to model that after some of the language on some of the energy development, which is the particular legislation that I'm speaking to, is supposed to be kind of a cost recovery. I guess I'd ask Alan if you would like to add further or share his perspective on the cost recovery. It would certainly be nice, at the end of the day, we maintain that statutory responsibility regardless of whether they're paying or not. It would be nice to have more of an opportunity for that cost recovery.
Yeah, for the record, Alan Janae, Habitat Division Chief, and so the AB 307, that was the cost recovery program for energy. And like Tony says, it was slated as an opportunity to get industry to pay for our technical review and comment. But literally the projects are our review and our input into the process, because the project proponent and the land management agencies come to us before they start paying, before the project is actually finalized. So our input is way in front of the actual billing calculation, or if a project fails, we've already provided comment, but they didn't end up with a project that actually provides any funding. So
In some ways, it creates an interesting irony where they may be subsidizing us to jeopardize their project. True.
That's true with any regulatory agency.
That's true.
And we face that all the time, wise up,
Any other questions on the Habitat Division? So that kind of concludes the agency overview portion, and certainly if questions occur to you later, don't hesitate to ask me or the respective division administrator. And I'm anticipating the chairman may have a desire to break for lunch, but the next item on the agenda is kind of more specific to the roles and duties of the CABs. We'll look at some of the statutory language for both the commission as well as the CABs. Look at Gil will help us look at some of the like the budgeting process and CAB handbook, some of those ideas, and then we'll go through some of the regulation process so people have some familiarity with the complexities that exist in that thing.
Tony, before you leave, well, what you went through just now, I've been on the Douglas CAP for 7, 8 years. I learned a lot today, and I know I've got some members that are newer than me. Would it be possible for, obviously I won't remember everything that you said, but to email that PowerPoint out to the CAPs?
It'll be a support material, or I don't, we still call it support material if it's after the fact, but it'll be available on the webpage. And I also spoke with Bert Gurr from Elko Cab, and I think that the department's been remiss in engaging with cabs, and not just the cab chairman, but the broader representation. And I think that, and maybe it need not even be exclusive to the cabs. And one of the things we heard in our license simplification discussions is a desire for transparency, and people want to know what we're doing, what we're spending their money on was one of the most common statements. you know, oh, we like the department, we like what you do, we would like to see what, you know, we want transparency, we want to see what you're spending our money on. And so, you know, maybe the next step, and I hesitate to even suggest this in front of staff because we have so many irons in the fire right now, but maybe the next step is we figure out some kind of a public process where you know, certainly at a minimum, we can make this available, and maybe we can look at opportunities for broader public engagement for this kind of thing, so we're not just all rallied around a divisive issue and beating each other up, but we can actually understand what the department's statutory responsibilities are and how we're accomplishing those.
I've been doing chairmanship now for 8 years, but I remember early on, when Ron Lurie was head of finance committee, there was a big shift over trying to get transparency in how the budget was spent. And I will say, when I started as chairman 8 years ago, it's not now, so right now, it's night and day, the transparency we have in what you guys do. So you've done a very good job, and since your takeover and with Kennedy and stuff, of really making things much more visible to all of us, how things are spent, how the dollars are allocated in the system. When I started, it was kind of a blur. You probably remember that. It was a blur.
It's a blur for me too. Thanks, Paul.
Any further questions for Tony or comments from the Cavs? Hearing none, I think that it is the proper time for a little break for lunch, and I think we will break until 1:30. And we'll come back and pick up where we left off.